As it relates to fasting, since we had the conversation, something really massive happened in culture, which was this word Ozempic became really popular. And the drug Ozempic became really popular. I know there's various types of it, Wegovy or something else. There's lots of different versions of it. But fasting as a tool is now quite established. But Ozempic as a tool for achieving the same outcomes, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So now, first, I'm just going to say I'm not an Ozempic expert, so I can't tell you the mechanisms behind that. What I will tell you is that, again, I'm a supporter of the everyday person. And the first challenge we have with Ozempic is the cost. So is everybody going to be able to afford that to be able to improve their metabolic health? I'm a supporter of the single mom who's working 2 jobs and is trying to just put food on the table. And Ozempic at $800,000 US dollars, she's not going there.
A month, isn't it? Is it a
A
month?
month.
Okay.
So the first thing is it's unattainable for so many people. Second thing is that we've got a challenge with some of the side effects. Now, there's been a lot of debate about that and the nausea and all that. Like, what is that? And some people have it, some people don't. So you have to personally decide if that works for you or not. The third issue is that, and this is a really interesting recent stat, is that within 2 years, 70% of Ozempic users are off Ozempic. I don't know if it's cost. I don't know if it's discomfort. I don't know what it is. But long term, that's not a phenomenal solution. So with that in mind, let's unpack what's happening from a symptomatology point of view with Ozempic. And the biggest thing is you are not hungry. Okay. So I can tell you thousands and thousands and thousands of comments. Those 2 women you started this podcast off with, when people learn how to do a fasting lifestyle, their hunger goes away. It is very, now I've never taken Ozempic, so I can't tell you per se that if it would be the same experience. But when you learn to metabolically switch, your hunger goes down because without food, you go into this ketogenic energy system. You get a ketone, it turns off hunger. So one of the biggest consequences we've seen in the millions of people we've seen build these fasting lifestyles is they go, I'm not hungry anymore.
I can relate.
Yeah.
When I did a ketogenic diet for a while, my hunger levels seem to drop as well. Is that a similar thing?
Yeah. So because your blood sugar is stable.
Okay, so you're not getting the spikes and drops and spikes and drops. Okay,
yeah,
that makes sense. And is that much of the reason why you end up losing weight? Because you just end up eating a little bit less, as well as you're staying away from glucose and stuff. But
yeah, it's 2. It's that. And then in order to make a ketone, you have to burn fat. Think about it. Let's put it in Ozempic terms. It would be like going to the pharmacy, and in order to pay your Ozempic bill, you had to give them a little piece of fat, and then of your fat. Mm-hmm. And then you came home with the shot, you plug it in, and now you're not hungry. Okay, that's what fasting's doing. Fasting is using your own fat to make this byproduct called a ketone. So you're losing weight in the process of making the ketone. And then the ketone goes up into the brain and actually shuts off the hunger hormone. And now you're not hungry.
Can't you see a world? Because I think with, again, this is my very limited knowledge of medicine and the biotech and pharmaceutical industry. I think what happens with patents, like medical patents, is eventually they expire. I think they expire after about 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So eventually the Ozempic patent is going to expire, which means that other people can produce that drug. I think the cost will eventually therefore go down, especially as other people start producing other iterations of the drug.
Yeah.
There becomes this price war, and you'll have all these different versions of Ozempic, but at lower cost.
Right.
Can you foresee, because I think I can, a world where most people in the Western world are taking some form of Ozempic to suppress hunger, and it's casual?
I don't know if I want to see that. I mean, the first thing I'd like to see is some long-term studies on this. I'd like to see, let's give this a little bit of time to see how it unfolds in the culture and how people react to it. And then we have to ask, how are we studying this on women? I'm gonna be the fierce advocate for making sure that this gets researched on women. So if we look at that world, I would say, okay, I'd only be willing to entertain that thought if we have some real clear data showing us long-term, 20, 30, 40 years, that it's going to be safe. Second thing, though, that I want to say on that, and this, I go back to what you started this with. Do you feel empowered? I mean, I know people are happy. They're like, oh my God, I finally lose weight. They feel really good in their body. Like, I don't want to dismiss that. And I'm not here to take that joy or excitement away from somebody who's losing weight with Ozempic. I think a fasting lifestyle is a phenomenal pair to Ozempic if that's you. But what I hear when people lose that amount of weight is that when you look at them, you're like, oh my God, you lost so much weight. They're like, yeah, I'm on Ozempic. The ones that are like, I'm going to own it. Okay, so Ozempic got the power. When I see somebody who lost weight from a fasting lifestyle, what they say is, yeah, I started to learn how to fast. And there is an internal power that I did this for myself. So again, we rob them of that internal experience. If every cure, including weight loss, is going to be found in a pill, how are we going to believe in our own bodies?
Do you know, the most interesting take I've heard on why Ozempic might be a really negative thing for society is actually the point you just made about discipline. And about, we talked at the start of this conversation about the comfort crisis and how everything's getting easier. We can date and eat and whatever else from the comfort of our own home. And now with AI coming into the world, where we're going to have AI agents, where we can tell our devices to go do things for us. If you play it forward a couple of years, you're looking at a world where we really don't have to do anything. Like, we don't have to move. We've really optimized discomfort, difficulty, challenge out of our lives. And now Ozempic offers another solution in that regard. I know that it saves lives. And I think that's a really amazing thing.
Yep.
And if I was in such a situation, I would take it.
Yep.
If my friends, family, children were, I'd be the first to make sure that they were taking it to save their lives. But you know, if we look back through history, we've made this trade-off and regretted it repeatedly. We've kind of chosen comfort and convenience at the expense of something else, which we only find out 10 or 20 years later, where we go, oh my God, Jesus, maybe having these devices or being able to order food like this or whatever else was a bad idea. But we won't find out for 20, 30 years. And it's really interesting also to see this almost counter movement in culture, where people are now this sort of counter movement of people that are choosing difficulty, the ice bath, the hydro marathon where they're running across, you know what I mean? And that feels like the counter movement to this sort of comfort crisis. But Ozempic, I actually categorize as part of the comfort crisis because of the comment I read at the start from the lady who said, it bolstered my confidence and I can now do hard things.
Yeah, and do people say that with Ozempic? I mean, it's a really interesting point. And, you know, my general ethos on health is that we should be looking within and what we're capable of doing to heal. I am not a fan of outsourcing our health. And this can even go down to the idea of ketones. There's a lot of exogenous ketones out there, and people ask me all the time, should I take exogenous ketones? And my feeling is, let's get you learning how to metabolically switch so you can make your own ketone first. And if we have to go into an exogenous ketone, we will. But that's another outsource. Like, we just keep outsourcing and outsourcing and outsourcing until we do not feel powerful in our own bodies. And 20, 30 years of that is going to be a serious human crisis.
I think the principle that if we don't do anything uncomfortable today, we kind of just defer the discomfort into the future is a really wonderful principle to live by. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that in the future you're going to necessarily have a physical health issue or metabolic health issue if you're choosing comfort in terms of your metabolic choices today. But you might have a relationship issue because you didn't learn, you know, to deal with discomfort, have uncomfortable conversations. You know, so it's interesting. It's just these principles for life. And one of them also is that I just think a really wonderful principle that I live by is that everything has a cost. And whenever someone presents you with the idea that there's a miracle drug or a miracle cure, it's because we haven't figured out the cost yet. And the uncertainty of not knowing the cost for me is terrifying. I'd rather someone said, listen, this drug isn't perfect and it has all these issues with it and you're going to suffer in this way, but is the trade-off worth it for you? Than to present it as a miracle drug. And I kind of think Ozempic right now is viewed as a bit of a miracle drug, which scares the hell out of me.
Right. Yeah. And again, we need more time with the long-term studies. And I think what's confusing about Ozempic is it does have some amazing upsides. And so we can't just totally villainize it. It's like, oh, there's some interesting things to learn here. And people who are in a massive metabolic crisis, it can be a lifeline to get them out. But again, a line that I will continue to hold is lifestyle, lifestyle, lifestyle. There is no free pass when it comes to your health. We can hack in from many different directions. We have some pretty fast paths to health, like, learning how to metabolically switch. But in the end, you are going to have to make health your responsibility, and you're going to have to work for it, especially as you age.
Mm. And diet is one of those things that the consequences of a bad diet, making bad dietary choices, is kind of invisible today. You might not feel great, or you might get a little bit of a stomachache or whatever, or feel a bit bloated, but it's almost like sowing seeds for your 100-year-old self that, you don't yet see the consequence of. And this is why I think diet has to become a bit of a religion to some degree. But you don't see the internal damage. You don't see the shifting of your gut microbiome on a daily basis.
Oh, I used to say this all the time to my patients. I would say, everything you're doing with your lifestyle now is preventing you from diseases you never knew you were going to get, because you'll never get them.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't even know that the 5 a.m. workout that you chose to get up and go do is going to actually save you from Alzheimer's 20 years from now. You have no idea the fasting lifestyle that you committed to is actually going to save you from some kind of hormonal cancer. Like, the list, it goes on, because you're doing it today to prevent tomorrow. And so there's no reward on that front, because prevention doesn't come with a ribbon.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.